Welkom, beste mensen, bij Café Weltschmerz. Leuk om hier weer te zitten. Vandaag hebben we wederom een speciaal interview, dit keer in het Engels, met niemand minder dan Jim Ferguson.
Hello.
Hi. So for the people who are not familiar, because you do a lot of broadcasts and a lot of actions in your native tongue, in English, who is Jim Ferguson and how did you get to the resistance?
Well, Jim Ferguson is just a very ordinary person who didn't really expect to be doing what he's doing now. So my background is as a business entrepreneur. So I've been in business and politics for quite a long time. Worked within the Conservative Party as a parliamentary candidate, and then fought for Brexit, for the Brexit Party with Nigel Farage as the European parliamentary candidate, and then Westminster, which we fought in towards the end of 2019. So the pandemic hit, the lockdowns hit. I'd bought a farm about 10 years before that. I went back to that, put up new fences, took in new livestock, and then decided out of curiosity to see if my social media was still active because I hadn't really posted anything. And I had a decision to make. I was either going to go back into the account or delete it. And it was a 50-50 thing. And before I did that, I made a coffee and I took out the dogs and I thought, I'm going to go back in and have a look. So I did. And at the height of the channel, there was about 2,400 followers. There was still 1,800 there, which surprised me because I hadn't posted anything for a long time. So I decided to record a short piece. And when I did, the response was immediate.
And when was this exactly?
This would have been about 16 months ago. So relatively, not a lot of time has passed. But the response was immediate. People said, "Nice to see you back, Jim, and what do you think about this?" And before I knew it, the channel actually exploded. And I found that there was a lot of people with very big accounts who started to follow me, and they retweeted a lot of the content. So I started to interview people, started to speak out more and more. Literally 15 months later,
And when you say your channel, it's just your personal social media?
Yeah, sure, yeah. But shortly after that, I decided that talking was good, but I'm a bit of a doer. I like to do things. And, I just felt the need to speak up more and more, but to offer solutions rather than just criticizing things. I wanted to actually offer people hope and solutions and advice and things like that. So I decided to form a freedom movement that was international. And I spoke to a couple of other business entrepreneurs who I knew well, and I said, "Look, this is what I'm thinking about doing. What do you think?" And they said, "Well, it's pretty ambitious." I said, "Well, I'm looking at modeling it on the Tea Party movement in the United States." And it just so happened that one of the founders there, had followed me, and we'd had...
So maybe Tea Party movement, explain for the audience what it is.
Well, the Tea Party movement in the United States was a grassroots movement. It kind of sprung up naturally, a very autonomous movement. There was no top-down sort of leadership. It was very much led by the people, and that appealed to me. Even in business, I never had models to show the managing director at the top and everybody down here. It was always on its side. So I was somewhere over here, but we were all effectively on the same level. And I think that's what I'm taking to Freedom Train International.
Because Freedom Train International, that's the project that you started, and that is gaining a lot of momentum at the moment.
It's gaining a lot of momentum. I took my time in reaching out to people in the United States and Canada in particular. That's really where I started it. And it's gone international. We now have representation from Germany, France, the Netherlands, UK, of course, Australia, New Zealand. And we have multiple thousands of members, but we only launched a few months ago, but already we've gained a lot of traction. And I think people understand our main priority is against censorship. We are very much for freedom. We're against medical tyranny. We're against people having freedom of choice. And really to make sure that we're helping to support people. And the big message of Freedom Train International is that you're not alone. Whether we're here in the Netherlands, whether it's in Scotland or England, or the United States, people have felt alone over the last 3 to 4 years. They felt isolated and quite fearful. And that's been done by the globalists quite deliberately to...
Yeah, the atomization of society.
Exactly. So we're fighting back against that, and we're showing people what they can do. There's a big additional upgrade that's coming very, very soon, and we're going to be teaching people how to, if they don't want to be part of the system, they can come out of that. And we'll teach them how to...
So you give them an alternative outside of what the mainstream narrative is.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I'm going to Denmark after my time here, and then I'm going back to London to do more work. I'm speaking at an event there along with Andrew Bridgen, who's become a friend of mine in the UK. He's a very good MP and
Now independent MP.
now independent
Yes.
MP, you know. And as we've seen at the last local elections in the UK, the independents have done very well. I think people are getting more and more inclined to vote for the person rather than the
Yes.
party. And as we discussed off camera, the parties are deeply infiltrated through the globalist World Economic Forum.
I mean, we just recorded our news show that we do every Friday, and we discussed a clip of Keir Starmer,
Right.
who had the question, Westminster or Davos? And he said, actually, without hesitation,
Yeah.
Davos.
Yeah.
That's where we are.
That's where we're at with it. And I mean, the founder of the Labour Party was Sir Keir Hardie, a fellow Scot. That he started back in Glasgow. And if he was to see what the modern Labour Party in the UK has become, he'd be horrified because they're so far to the left, they're so woke, they're into trans ideology. Sir Keir Starmer can't even tell you what a woman is.
They have radicalized and lost their base.
Absolutely.
Because they are not fighting for the rights of the worker.
Not at all. And indeed, one of the really valuable things that I discovered, because I'm sort of pretty moderate, I'm straight down the middle about most things, maybe a little bit to the right, but not that far. But when I joined the Brexit Party, I found out that there was at least 40 to 50% of the other people involved who were from the traditional Labour left. And indeed, I was put into a target seat in Barnsley in England. And practically every single member of my team were from the former traditional Labour left. But they were very good to me, but they were passionate Brexiteers. They understood that we should, as sovereign nations, be independent of that sort of top-down, dictatorial type way that they have in the European Union, in particular the Commission.
Exactly, and that is also one of the pillars of the Freedom Train project.
Yes.
It's about patriotism, taking the power back.
Yeah. I mean, I'll happily carry the flag of any nation with patriots, and I've gone on many marches. I was in Ireland a few months ago in O'Connell Street, a march with 10,000 Irish patriots. I was carrying the Irish tricolor and other flags there. Indeed, they invited me to speak on stage, and it was a great honor for me.
Now, what we see with national flags, except the Ukrainian flag or the Israeli flag, because that's in the narrative.
Yeah.
But as soon as you start carrying national flags, you're extreme right. Have you noticed that?
Oh yeah. But it's not really extreme right. We just believe in our countries and our sovereignty, and we're proud of our nations. And I mean, when I was on stage, I was across the United States last year for 3 weeks. I was across 8 different states speaking on stage with people, just as we are now. And I was actually asked to lead the Pledge of Allegiance to the American flag. So you turn to the flag, you put your hand on your heart, and you recite it. And it was a great honor for me. And I understand why people believe in their national identity. And so we're very much passionate about that.
Well, it's very logical, especially because you're from Scotland.
Yes.
You're from the Highlands, actually. So
I'm a Scottish
fighting for freedom is in your blood.
Yeah, good.
So that clan system, that's actually the precursor of national identity. And that had very much to do with a common defense against threats from the outside.
Yeah, it was a very natural progression in the clan chiefs. I mean, I'm from Clan Ferguson, and you know, we were very, very warlike. You know, when the clans weren't fighting the English at that time. By the way, I've got lots of English friends. There's no issue. I love them. But you know, back in the day, yes, they were an invading force coming in, and the Scottish people, the Highland people in particular, you know, were burned out of their farms and their crofts, small holdings. And that's why many people fled to the United States, Canada, Australia. There are Scottish people all around the world with Scottish ancestry. And of course, wherever I go, I usually find somebody who is part of that. And of course, I've got a little bit of Norwegian Viking in there as well, back in the day. So yeah, I've got fighting spirit from both sides. But yeah, they're warlike people, and when they weren't fighting the English, they were fighting each other. So
yeah, that's a disadvantage maybe, but it actually surprised me that in Scotland now they have passed a law about hate speech.
Yeah.
And when you look at hate speech, I discussed this with Ike. The document about anti-Semitism coupled to conspiracy theories with Garrett Ike. I discussed this. Coupled to conspiracy theories to get to hate speech, and then anything goes, because any view you have on the world that is contrary to the allowed opinions is hate speech now.
Well, we noticed that with the World Economic Forum in Davos. Their first priority, main priority declared was, it wasn't world peace, it wasn't to cure world hunger, it wasn't to, medical breakthroughs, it was misinformation and disinformation. In other words, that's their top priority, because they see the work that you do, they see the work that I do and other people like us. And they don't like that, because we're giving people an alternative news and alternative views. And they want their views to be the only ones that are communicated. So what they're doing is they're using their proxies, their puppets, whatever you want to call them, in our national respective governments to enact their policies. And it's very dangerous for freedom. And that's why I reacted in the way that I did. But I did it in a way that is well thought out, well designed. And we're uniting people, as I say, around the planet, really just to make sure that people understand what's really happening. The mainstream media, unfortunately, are indeed captured.
Yes.
And it's very hard for people, in particular people like yourself, that are fighting for justice in particular and freedom against things like hate speech laws, and other politicians here in the Netherlands, as well as others in other countries. Because the general population are only hearing one side of it. Yes. Which is the globalist side of things. So what we're doing is pretty integral and very, very important to showcase the fight that you're fighting for. And I have to say, you are seen not just within the Netherlands as a true freedom fighter, but in the UK as well. Your name is well known there and respected for the courageous stand you've taken.
Well, that's good to hear, and I hope I can keep fighting. But I agree with you that it's very important not to try to beg for crumbs with the mainstream media, because they are captured. They will not turn around. They have been complicit in the last 4 years, which has been outrageous, the biggest medical scandal in history. So I would say, and this is what your project is also built around, is make our own new media. Like the studio we're sitting in today, Café Weltschmerz is a perfect example of it. And many other channels. And what I see is that these channels are growing very fast. And the meeting in Davos last January, I think, was specifically targeted at this. Restoring trust. No, it was said, okay, we have to increase censorship. So do you find a lot of pushback from the channels that you would expect it from?
Well, yes. I mean, I think we all find that. I mean, there are certain platforms that you will not be allowed to simply speak freely. And, we've encountered that. I mean, to be honest, I know that sometimes Elon Musk gets criticized, and perhaps with good reason. But I have to say, in fairness to him, if it wasn't for Elon Musk purchasing Twitter, or X as it's now known as, I wouldn't be here with you today.
True. And then some people would have the argument say, well, yes, but X still has censorship, specifically the freedom of reach, because we are in our echo chambers. Now, what X did is to attract all the people that wanted to speak out. But what it also did is that we didn't create our own X.
That's true. That is true. And I think what you're doing here, Café Weltschmerz, and I hope I pronounced that correctly. My Dutch is not as good as your English.
Weltschmerz is actually German, but yes.
Okay. But the thing is, as we progress, as we continue to fight for our narratives and to reflect the opinions of people in our respective countries, that's inevitable that support is going to grow. And one thing that I never really set out to do any of this, as I say, I have a business background and political background, but I didn't expect to be doing a lot of things on social media. But I'm interviewing a lot of doctors, professors, epidemiologists, scientists. People are finding that very interesting. And indeed, I've learned a lot from people. I interviewed Professor Guter from Germany yesterday. My goodness, what he was telling me was it's not gone out yet, it's in editing. I wouldn't be at all surprised if that doesn't get a lot of views around the world, because it's a powerful message, and it's one he's talking to me about things that were not commonly talked about, which
Mhm.
is directly relevant to all the things we've been discussing here today as well.
Absolutely. But these revelations and these clips that go viral, we have been seeing for the last 4 years. I must say that indeed, since Elon Musk took over,
Hmm.
I think it was end of the 2022.
Yeah.
But also the measures against COVID went down.
Hmm.
Freedom of speech has recovered a little bit.
Yeah.
Yet policies haven't changed one single inch. Why is that?
Well, once again, they want to control the narrative. Now, I mean, I don't know what kind of discussions Elon Musk has with his senior staff. His deputy, of course, is linked into the World Economic Forum,
Mhm.
and she was the one that coined the phrase freedom of reach, not freedom of speech.
Mhm.
So I have to say that I'm aware of some people having difficulty with that. So far, I'm very fortunate in that some of my tweets go viral fairly regularly, I have to
Mhm.
say, well into millions of views. Maybe I haven't been noticed yet, I don't know.
No,
But
I've noticed that you really have a channel that has an outreach. When I look at my own social media accounts, and of course that's also related to the language. I do most of the stuff in Dutch, and that's just 30 million people around the world.
mhm,
English, then we're talking about more than 1 billion
yeah,
potential viewers.
yeah. But there's a lot of people following me from
Mhm.
India, from Brazil, South America, Argentina.
Nice.
And you know that through the comments when you go through, and I like to reply to people. I like to
Mhm.
thank people if they make a comment, and or they're interacting with it, you know, and I appreciate that level. I'll actually dedicate an entire day just to do that, and I think it's appropriate, because if people are taking the time to share your content and to help promote what you're trying to do, get that message out, the least we can do as content creators is to say, you know, I really appreciate it.
And it's personal accountability. That's the thing that is lacking from uh, our executive brands
Mm,
as a whole.
mm.
And we, as the new media, should be open for debate,
Yeah,
for
absolutely.
comments, for critique as well.
Yeah.
So, how do you have you gotten to the point sometimes that you said, okay, maybe this tweet wasn't completely accurate? How do you follow up on that?
Well, yeah, I mean, obviously, we want to be accurate in what we're doing, because from a credibility point of view,
Mhm.
from a reputational point of view, we want to be accurate in what we're saying, because we will get criticized, and rightly so, if we're putting out content that's not. I mean, mistakes can be made, we can correct things, we can delete things if it becomes apparent that it's not correct. But I can tell fairly quickly when something's going quite big. So when it gets to 50,000 views in the hour, I can pretty much guarantee that that's going to be heading up to over 1 million. So that happens quite regularly. But the,
And do you see the troll farms getting active then? Because that's
yeah,
when I see a tweet of mine gaining momentum,
yeah,
then it's 1, 2, 3 trolls coming in.
absolutely. I mean, I've spoken out about the Ukraine situation, and what's going on there, and the corruption that's involved, and why once again we shouldn't be doing it. And of course, I've seen bots. You know, they've got 10 followers, they've got 5 followers, and just it's an onslaught. I spent 3 hours just hiding the comments and deleting them, blocking them. You know, because it was like an attack that came in,
Mhm.
and it takes a little bit of time to do that. One thing I don't do is I don't get into arguments with people. If they do that, I block and move on and forget them. But it doesn't happen that often. I'm very lucky. I seem to have a lot of support. And once again, many of the comments, if somebody puts up a ridiculous comment, they'll get absolutely attacked by all the
By
people
the
that support
followers,
me.
yes. Yeah.
I'm very conscious of the fact, and I had no idea that the channel would grow to the extent that it has as quickly as it has.
So you have almost 300,000 followers?
Not
on
quite as
Twitter?
much as that, but every time well, for the last 2 times I've come to the Netherlands, it's taken another jump, and I know that there's a lot of people following me from here, in large part to the interview that you did with me, and others like Wieve von Haga, Anna Merel Kloesterman, Wouter, and
Yeah.
Akima, and some other people like that. So I think it's also been helped by the fact that there are some very well-known people that do follow my channel. Even going back to the early days for whatever reason, and they were retweeting out some of the content, so that helped to gain traction. But yeah, they're all real people. You do get bots. You do get people that have 100,000 followers, but they get no viral tweets. They get no comments or likes or shares. With me, there's like loads and loads and loads of that. So it's grown very, very fast, and I'm just been very grateful and very fortunate to people.
I'm somewhat surprised almost that it has taken such a flight and gained such a momentum. Although you started relatively late,
Yeah.
so 2022,
Yeah.
at the end of it, when the measures were already going down. So maybe you missed all the shadow bans and
Oh, I
then
think
came
so.
in.
Oh, definitely, because under the previous regime of X, I would have been targeted right away.
Yeah.
For saying the things I've said and exposing some of the issues, and of course for interviewing people, top medical doctors. I mean, we're talking about very, very senior people, surgeon generals, these types of people who are very, very senior within their own fields of expertise. And of course, many of them had their careers put on hold. They lost their licenses to practice, and we know what happened. But yes, if I'd discussed any of that content at that point. So I think timing is very important. I think being in the right place at the right time is incredibly important. And I've had I would say, a degree of luck, if you want to call it that. But I think also effort and really committing to the cause is what I'm about. I know you do the same. You believe in what you're doing, and you have to believe.
It's a
and
call.
push.
That's
Well, it is actually. I do feel that it is necessary to step up and speak out. And I think when we do that, when you do that, when I do that, other people see that and they will follow.
It's setting an example, and that's maybe the most important message of this episode or this interview that we do, is that I started somewhere, not being a person in media. You started somewhere, and just speaking out, speaking your mind, doing the research, talking with people, checking what are the facts. And anybody can do that, because sometimes I get the question, well, can you do it this way? And so, well, but you can do it yourself. No, but I don't have enough followers or other excuses. And I think it's really important that if you feel strongly about something, that you just start doing it. Now, you've come to Holland. You've visited most of the people that you just mentioned. One of the people in Holland that is in the news lately is Mark Rutte. Are you familiar with him?
I am, because I've been covering and supporting the Dutch farmers for a long time now. Since I came back, it was one of the things that I feel passionate about. And to be honest with you, the Dutch farmers led the way in terms of those peaceful protests, pushing back. But yes, Mark Rutte is part of the World Economic Forum. He's part of the globalist movement. And now, of course, he's now leading NATO, which is concerning for me, and it's concerning for a lot of people in the UK. We are concerned about that, and
because he's a total puppet. He will do whatever it takes.
Of course.
He has no moral. I don't even think he has personal ideals.
Well, I think in what we're looking for in our political leaders is principled behavior. Now, the other thing about it is that we don't necessarily always agree with somebody or somebody's particular point of view, but if they mean what they say and they say what they mean.
Authenticity, integrity.
Exactly. And that's where we don't see that. In the UK with Rishi Sunak, World Economic Forum member again, these are what I would call WEF administrators.
Yes.
They're not leaders in their own right. Same with Justin Trudeau in Canada.
Macron and all these people that I believe are actually built out of the blueprint of Mark Rutte.
Yes, they're all out of the same mold.
Yeah.
Young global leaders, handpicked for having the ability to speak clearly, come across well, look okay, but actually they're actors.
Yeah.
Zelensky's a good point in case. He's a bit like that too.
Yeah.
Chosen for the fact that they will do what they are told to do. And in some ways, I often wonder if they're also controlled in terms of blackmail as well. I wouldn't be at all surprised if there's some aspects of that.
I think it's a mix of not having any ideals, of being an overachiever, of maybe doing something naughty with children, etc., etc. Now, Rishi Sunak has announced snap elections.
Yes.
So you will have elections in the coming week or coming
4th
2
of
weeks?
July.
4th of July.
Yeah.
The
So,
day of my verdict
well, and Independence Day in the United States.
and the Independence Day. Yeah.
So perhaps that will reflect well on you. But yes, not entirely surprising. I'm very fortunate to know lots of interesting people, although I'm just a very ordinary person. I know people that are connected into British military and people who are working within that side of things. So I've been aware for the last 7 or 8 months that it was very likely that he was going to call a snap election. And the reason for that is because some of the top brass, the senior commanders, generals, admiralty, field marshals, are well aware that Rishi Sunak did not want to be a wartime prime minister. Once again, he lacks character, he lacks true leadership, and he is making a bolt for the exit door.
Exactly, because he called snap elections while his ratings are plummeting. That's a very weird move normally.
Very, and he's also doing things that is actually causing the Conservative Party, of which I used to be a member, to implode. The polls are showing them that they could actually be facing an electoral wipeout, which means that they lose vast numbers of seats in Parliament. Now, I think that one of the strategies might have been for him to hand over the baton to Sir Keir Starmer, who is the leader of the Labour Party, another World Economic Forum member that we discussed. But actually, there could be an upending in British politics. There's two parties that are gaining traction. One is George Galloway, who is a fellow Scot. He's very much on the left, but actually I agree with a lot of the things he says, especially against the globalists.
He is what old Labour.
He is what is old Labour, and he's got a great appeal. He's a powerful orator.
Yeah.
There's very few that can publicly debate him. I was invited onto his show a few weeks ago. I got to ask him some questions. And he is the Workers' Party are going to probably come in a very strong way and attack Labour, who are the sort of on the left side. He could do very well. Equally on the right side, we have the rise of Nigel Farage. He's come back in as the leader of Reform UK to explain. We had the Brexit Party, and then it became Reform UK, but there was somebody else leading it up until very recently. So Nigel Farage has come back in as the leader, and that has really captured the headlines in the British media and indeed around the world.
But do you think, because we had that same dynamic in Holland the last 3 elections, so the provincial, the national, and now the European, what we see is that these opposition parties, and also the fairly new opposition parties, gain a lot of seats, but the policy doesn't change. Now, in Holland, I'm quite aware, even if you look at the new pick of prime minister, who was the head of the spy master, Dick Schoof. In England, I think it's the same thing. You have GCHQ, MI5, MI6, they are calling the shots. So would it matter if we get these dark horses gaining a lot of seats? Would the policy actually change?
Well, the big question is, can we solve what we are witnessing politically? That's a big question, because if the answer is no, then that leads into a lot of other discussions. Because if you can't solve it politically, democratically, then what's the option? Well,
that option is not on the table in Holland anymore, because if you discuss this option and you mention the Second Amendment, for instance, in the United States, you might get a conviction.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. But I think peaceful non-compliance is something. Just walking away from that system, and that's why Freedom Train is giving people the knowledge, and we're going to be giving out a lot of detailed knowledge about what you can do. It's very detailed, and it's going to be giving people the option to come in and learn, even people that had never thought about alternative lifestyles, from absolute complete beginners to intermediate to advanced levels. And we've got some amazing people that have that deep knowledge. I've written probably about 3 books in the last 15 to 16 months. I've not published them; they're in manuscript form, but I'm doing that to make that content available. So that's. I have very good colleagues from an educational background that are breaking that down, so that people that come in as members can have access to all of that. So we're really quite serious about what we're trying to do. But yeah, solving things politically can be difficult. But at the same time,
The game is rigged. Eh? George Carlin already said it.
did.
It's a big club, and we ain't in it.
yeah, he's an amazing guy. His quotes are very much in my camp, you know.
Yeah.
And of course, we've also got a big election taking place in November in the United States. There is a very high chance that I'm going to be going there. I am very fortunate to have met many people over there when I was there last time, but also
And who would you support in the United States?
in terms of politically,
Yes.
well, I've made no mistake, I'm a Trump guy.
Yeah.
I love the fact that he loves his country. Is he perfect? Of course he's not. None of us are. But I think he truly loves America. And I think that another reason why I'm supporting him is because I've got it on good account from people that are kind of watching things very carefully in Europe, and indeed attended the Davos meetings, not as WEF members, but as a kind of observers.
Yeah.
That one thing the globalists truly fear is another Trump presidency. So if the globalists don't want it, I want it.
Rightfully so, because I agree with you, Trump isn't perfect, and he will not oppose large parts of Agenda 2030, but some parts that are essential to the plan, he will oppose. And it will create a big dent in that whole plan.
So there is a chance that I'm going to go across there. I've reached out to some people whose shows I've been on, who have had me on as a regular guest. I've been on all sorts of channels, Fox. I've been on all sorts. Stu Peters show. I mean, he's you know, and others. So there's a likelihood that I might go across there, link up with them, do some recordings, do some filming, and see how it all goes.
If you look at the polls, it's almost impossible for Trump to lose, I would say, at this moment.
So.
Unfortunately, Kennedy has not gained enough momentum to play a big role in that election.
Yeah.
And I still doubt it very much that Sleepy Joe can actually make it to November, at least consciously.
Well, I like Robert Kennedy. I agree with you. I think he's a libertarian. You know, he is very much in the same frame of mind as me.
Yeah.
But I would agree that he hasn't quite captured that yet. Trump absolutely has. And I think if it's a truly free and fair election, Trump's going to get in with a huge majority.
Yeah.
But my concern is, will it be free and fair? And we've seen some headlines to do with other things like H5N1, avian influenza, that could possibly affect that, you know. But I would certainly like to see him back in. And I think if he did, we would actually be one step closer to solving the Ukrainian situation, calming things down with Russia and China. Truly, we don't want a war.
Yeah, because when we look at Europe, it's war rhetoric all over, especially Great Britain and Holland. They are among the most fervent supporters of more war.
Yes,
it's crazy, and it feels to me like as soon as they start to lose their control over the narrative, they tip the board. And tipping the board is making an all-out war.
I mean, really, it doesn't bear thinking. But I know that the conscription is now being actively talked about in Germany, here, in the Netherlands, and of course in the UK. The excuse they've been given is that they want to take young people in and teach them some discipline. Now, ordinarily, that might be okay, teach them, values and discipline, but that's not their true motive.
No, it's geared towards Ukraine.
Correct. They want to put them to the meat grinder. I'm very opposed to that. I don't think our young people should be going anywhere near that. It's not our business. And of course, the peace process could have been solved if Boris Johnson hadn't gone across when he was Prime Minister and nixed the whole thing at the behest of the Biden regime. So I don't want war. I feel terribly for the Ukrainian men and women who have lost.
Been sacrificed.
Absolutely. Hundreds of thousands of them, The reality is, I think Ursula von der Leyen let slip in an interview
that there was at least 150,000 dead.
Yeah.
And in reality, it's probably 2 or 3 times as much.
Yes, easily. And I think that's a tragedy because they fought bravely. They did what they thought was right, but it's a bad thing.
It's a whole generation being wiped out.
Yeah, it is. It is.
In the name of peace. It's so delusional that I'm surprised that especially the left-wing parties are completely on the war bandwagon.
It's like there's been an entire shift, and it doesn't make sense to me. I'm not a pacifist, especially with my ancestry, but I'm not for war, especially war that's unnecessary. I would fight for my country. without hesitation and do whatever I had to do. I come from a long line of military who have seen active service in many theatres around the world over many years. So I understand perhaps a bit more about that, but I still maintain wherever there is an opportunity for peace, that should be explored. And I also believe, I don't really believe that Vladimir Putin wants war. I think that the borders that is often discussed, well, he has not increased his borders towards NATO. It's the other way around. NATO has increased their borders towards Russia. And I'm not a Putin fan. I'm not a Putin apologist at all. He's a strong leader for Russia. I think he's a patriot, to be honest, for Russia. And I admire that. But we don't want war. And I think there's dangerous red flags appearing in our respective countries all the time. And I'm just concerned that if there's a baton handover to Sir Keir Starmer in the UK, that might accelerate that pace. I have even heard people talking about potential boots on the ground by the autumn. So we're maybe only months away from that.
Yeah, but that means body bags
Yes.
in the winter. And I don't really see it coming to that. I think that fear and excitement almost for war is being used to increase spending for the military-industrial complex, to secure their political positions, etc., etc. But I also agree that you create such a volatile situation that if anything goes wrong, it cascades out of control.
And that's the danger, Willem, because I think at the end of the day, you know, when you're talking about countries like China, Russia, the United States, massive militaries, massive capability, one mistake, one wrong move could escalate incredibly quickly. And that's, once you let the genie out of the bottle, as it were, you can't get that back in too quickly. But I think we're all hoping that Trump gets reelected, because I think that would calm it down. And one thing that's quite clear, Vladimir Putin has no respect for Joe Biden.
No.
But he does have respect, and a healthy respect. I would say almost not so much a fear, but he knows if Trump says he's going to do something, he'll do it. And that, when you're dealing with a nuclear-armed superpower, is something that always has to be taken into context.
Well, I think if we try to understand Putin's perspective, then it's all about reliability. The West has squandered any reliability that was there to begin with the Minsk Accords and then the Istanbul Accords that Boris Johnson torpedoed. And constantly this rhetoric about Russia having to surrender, etc. It's delusional.
You know, in business, when you make an agreement with somebody, you're very foolish to not honor that agreement, because you get a reputation for being unreliable. And that's exactly how Vladimir Putin views these things. And of course, one of the other reasons why they dislike him so much is that he was involved with the World Economic Forum. They thought he was part of the club until he was asked to sacrifice Mother Russia on the altar of globalism. And he said, no, I'm not going to do that, because at heart, he is a patriot. And he walked away from it. So there's a real dislike of him from that perspective. But yes, the Minsk agreements, that was an agreement that was on the table, and the West broke their agreement. So how can you expect a national leader to trust them again? The trust is very much at rock bottom. And I think if we were in those positions, we would feel exactly the same way.
Coming back to the World Economic Forum, restoring trust, what they mentioned in January. We know their idea of restoring trust, but how do we restore trust in our society ourselves?
I think we have to be the authors of our own destiny. We can't rely on these infiltrated governments to write the history books any longer. We have to take a bold, courageous, and peaceful stand to say, look, we don't agree with this. We don't want to be part of this. We're not going to do anything to the state. We're not going to attack the governments. We're not going to do anything like that. We simply don't comply with it, and we don't want to go down that route. And I think that's where we're trying to offer solutions to people and how to prepare for that, because there's a lot of things that people need to know about if they're going to go down that particular path. And they need to start very quickly. One of the main things that we're advising people to do is to get out of debt. Get out of debt. And people say, well, that's impossible. Well, actually, there are things that can be done. And if you start it right away.
But you have to sacrifice some comfort.
Well, Yeah, you have to, do things that we'll advise you on what to do,
Yeah.
and then it's up to them to decide. But we can teach you, we can show you the path, we can show you how to achieve that. So if you're serious about it and you join Freedom Trade International, we're going to give you that, and we're putting a lot of work and effort into that. So I think that there's a solution there, but I mean, we're not the only one. We're linked into a lot of veterans groups. I had an incredible meeting with Eddie Cornell from Veterans for Freedom, who took a stand. They're military veterans who didn't agree with the vaccine mandates, and they supported the Freedom Convoy. And of course, I was across in Ottawa just after I came back from the States last year as well. So I met a lot of those within the Freedom Movement there, became very good friends. We were in contact, and indeed, many of them came to the Netherlands the last time I was here. It was actually them that persuaded me to come. So I'm very glad I did. I wasn't going to come, and they said, no, you've got to come. And of course, I've met so many wonderful people here. So I've been made very welcome. I pay tribute to all of the people in the Netherlands who have made me feel so welcome. And we've become good friends. And I suspect I'll be coming back again to the Netherlands quite soon.
I think that is probably the most important lesson that we have learned. Together we can resist it, but separate we will fall. And now that the attack is more from the sides instead of the full frontal attack that we had in COVID-19, now is the time to dig the trenches and to build the bunkers, because the other side is preparing for the next wave. I am quite confident.
I absolutely agree 100%. And that's exactly sort of the mindset I have. We have to prepare now. We have to be ready for it. We've seen the advent of CBDCs. I was in Hoofddorp and was amazed to see that the cash buddies, the machines for cash and depositing cash are restricted to one area.
Yep.
And indeed, all the banks have shut down.
Yeah.
I did a post about that.
I saw it. I reposted it. Yeah.
Oh, did you? Yeah. Thank you. A lot of people have actually. And once again, some of those big accounts have been doing that too. Mm-hmm. So it's getting the word out. But central bank digital currencies, that's
starting November 2025. They have an official date now.
Yeah. So once again, cash is under attack because it's privacy and it's about freedom and it's about autonomy. Yeah, they want to tell us, and if they don't agree with something that we're going to purchase, they can stop us.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we could go on and on for hours about this, but do you have a message? Do you have something that you really feel that the viewers must hear?
I would say to the people who are watching us, don't be afraid, because that's how they control us. Don't be concerned about the future. We've got a lot of plans working with our partners around the world. So don't be afraid. And there are a lot of things that can be done, practical things, sensible things that can make such a difference in your lives. So the message is, have hope, don't give up, and pay attention to great leaders like you who are bold and courageous and speaking up on the things that really matter, and support people like Willem and others around the world, because that's the way we will fight. But and every fighter needs a support network around them. We need funding, we need business people to link into us, we need support, and we need people to, if in the old style of battles, we need people to tend our wounds, the stretcher bearers, the medics. We need that around us, because we can only fight for so long without having that support. And if we're to be truly effective, we need that team around us, and building that, and when the fighters work together and join forces peacefully to get that message across, I think that's when it becomes even more effective. So have hope, never give up. We are the authors of our own destiny, and we will triumph in the end.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Steed. Pleasure.